Beruchim Abayim, and welcome to Torah Talk Chazaq's Tuesday program with special guests. We have with us Rabbi Dons. Baruch haba, welcome. Wow, it's an honor. Great to have the rabbi over here, all the way from Vancouver. Oh no, used to be in Vancouver.
Used to be in Vancouver.
Baruch Hashem, welcome the Menal of Yeshiva Tiferes Moshe, where I had the schut, the merit to go to my kids. Oh, really? Interesting. And we're going to be talking about chinuch in today's day and age.
Yes.
And before we get to tonight's topic, we could have the rabbi a little bit of background about yourself.
Absolutely. I grew up right here in Kew Gardens Hills. As I mentioned, I'm a graduate of Yeshiva Tiferes Moshe myself.
Proud graduate.
Very proud graduate. It's a little interesting coming back into the yeshiva administrative role. It's like, oh, I remember. Shouldn't tell that story. But yeah, after Yeshiva Tiferes Moshe, I went to Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim from Mesivta. I'm a Talmud of Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim, both here in
Forest Hills days.
In Forest Hills days, as well as Chafetz Chaim's branch in Rochester. And then I left Queens for a few years, close to 30 years. I was in Rochester for a number of years on the Hanhala, and then the last 17 years away in Vancouver, British Columbia, running a Torah day school. And just 2 years ago, came back to Queens, invited to run Yeshiva Tiferes Moshe.
And doing an amazing job, Baruch Hashem. We get tell through our son of Adiyah, Yosef and Moshe Meir. And like we said, we're going to be speaking about chinuch, education in today's day of age. And, there's many different types of educators out there. And Rabbi Pacht Baruch Hashem has been very successful. If you could tell your goals with regards to chinuch and education.
Absolutely. We use the term chinuch, education. The word chinuch actually shows up early in the Torah. And Rashi explains what the word chinuch really means. And he says, I'll share Rashi's words in Hebrew and then translate. It says, it is a hascholas knisas ha'adam. It is the very first introduction of an individual to the work, the profession that he will ultimately operate within. So we think about education as a level of training, it's information, it's skills. But from the broader perspective, we want people to be successful adults. So chinuch includes training them, teaching them to be successful adults. So of course we have to teach them to learn, and they have to be successful academically to be successful as individuals as well. But it's a much broader view. We're building the individual, we're building the child, Emir Hashem, into an adult.
An amazing Baruch Hashem, Chaz Hashem. And there's many different approaches when it comes to chinuch. There's those that the olden days, I guess, would say there would be a little bit more.
I think I might be from the olden days. As a student, I might have been in the olden days. There definitely are various approaches, and there is a time and a place for a variety of different approaches. But I would say that it is well agreed upon by many educators today that fire and brimstone is not the way to reach children, and the way to reach children and families really is to share with them your care and your concern for them and let them know that you're really there to help, because you are. I mean, I know a lot of people who are in chinuch, very few of them have told me they went into chinuch for the money, right? Like
that's right. Yeah, you could definitely. Yeah, we actually had this discussion in the past that there is an issue out there with regards to.
There is, but let's be honest. If we paid Chanchim well, everybody would want to do it, and then the market would be flooded. But I don't think it's not such a concern. Not such a concern. But people go into chinuch because they want to help people. My predecessor, Rabbi Yaakov May, Shlita, likes to say our yeshiva is a chesed organization. We're in the chesed business. We're here to do kindness to people. Right? We're here to help people. I'm coming from Vancouver. I have a different spin. I said, we're a customer service organization. But ultimately, we both mean the same thing. We're all here to help families. We're here to help children. Let them know that. Let them know that. Be makarev, bring them closer, help them to, and as people appreciate how much you care about them, then they start to listen to what you have to say. The last thing you ever want is a combative relationship or a standoffish relationship. Mm-hmm. So there's a boss. A child has to know that the teacher is in charge, and they have to listen to the teacher. And a certain, of course, derech eretz, proper respect and conduct. All those things are true and necessary, but the foundation of the relationship is the child knows that the Rebbe cares, the teacher cares, the menahel, the principal cares, everybody cares.
Like I remember one of my rebbeim told me many, many years ago that with regards to the shul, that nobody cares about how much you know until they know how much you care.
Beautiful.
And that is exactly what the rabbi is saying over here, where it's the relationship with the Rebbe and Talmud, the teacher and the student, and that makes the difference.
And I'm sure you have recollections when you yourself were a Talmud of
100%.
that Rebbe, of that teacher.
Nora Leah, Rabbi Kifel, Rabbi Zlotnik. I'm going to stop there because I'm
So
scared.
everyone, what I'm hearing is every Rebbe, every teacher, but it's with, I myself, I have memories from 40 years ago. 40 years ago in elementary school.
Not the same names that I just mentioned. More or less.
No. I started in Yeshua Yisrael. So I moved over to Torah Moshe. Yes, I moved over to Torah Moshe, but a Rebbe who I had in Or Yisrael, and I knew that he was special. He cared about me. It was just interactions. As an 8-year-old, I understood. That Rebbe is still teaching, and he's now a Rebbe in Yeshiva Torah Moshe.
Rabbi Pacht.
Still. And I wouldn't even know if I was allowed to share names. And he still is able to convey that. And I hope that Rabbi Pacht will forgive me for sharing this. The very first day of school, he takes down the Hebrew name and the Hebrew mother's Hebrew name of every child in his class. And for the next 250 days, he carries it in his jacket pocket. He says Tehillim every day for his students.
Wow. And I'll tell you something, all 5 of my siblings, we all had Rabbi Pacht. It started off in Or Yisrael, and then later on, when they closed to Faris Moshe, and we see him all the time, and he remembers all of us, and just very inspiring. So how did that apply to parents? We just mentioned how educators and chinuch.
So I'm so glad you asked that question, because people tend to use the term chinuch for formal schooling, formal education. It's not. My definition of chinuch is preparing children for their future selves to be who they're going to be. That's not the Rebbe's job alone. That happens in the home. At a certain age, we may have the children in yeshiva for more waking hours than the parents have them at home. But which is
a great thing, by the way. The public schools, just for the record, for everyone out there, for whatever reason, it doesn't make sense to me. The older you get, the less school you have, which means they're more on the streets and doing. And the yeshivas, which really makes sense. You're in the yeshiva for longer.
To a certain extent, formal schools were created when people still worked in factories or on farms. So if you needed the teenagers to work on the farm, you need them home earlier in the day. But it's certainly now there's typically no parent at home, so all these things are of much more significant concern. A child who comes home at 2:30 or 3 o'clock from a public school, there's nobody there to greet them anyway.
This is what Chazaq deals with. We have all these kids, they have nothing to do. Boredom, we know, the Pirkei Avos says it comes as a sin, and they're involved with crime and drug, unfortunately. So we have these after-school programs to get them off the streets and get them busy.
From what I understand, Chazaq is doing a phenomenal job.
We have to do more. The Gula hasn't come yet.
There's always what to do.
Yes,
there's always what to do.
But once the redemption comes, and we know that...
there'll be what to do then, too. Sure. We'll have different things to do.
I was always wondering if we'll be out of business, quote-unquote, when the shift comes in that.
Maybe.
I guess
you'll pivot. You'll pivot.
But going back to the parents, and
so if you the greatest impact on children comes from their parents, right?
At the home.
100%. It comes from the home. The immersion of the home in those early years, developmentally, psychologically, emotionally, those are the first and the strongest connections that an individual is going to have, which is why, of course, it's so incredibly important that every parent view themselves as an educator as well. It's funny because in education, there's a terminology. It's actually a legal term that a teacher is en loco parentis, right? It's Latin. I speak a little Latin. Who doesn't? When a child is in school, we, the administrators, the teachers, have parental rights. We can make emergency decisions for a child, chas v'shalom, if there's a medical concern. But in truth, the parents are en loco the mechanchem. The parents are the mechanchem. No, so not everybody is trained in the pedagogy of education. Not everybody is able to spend that time, but it used to be, right? In the previous generations, going back to the times of the Gemara, before Rabbi Yeshua ben Gamla, who instituted formal schools, everybody was taught at home, right? The father taught the sons, the mothers taught the daughters, and that is still the case. So we're here to partner with and assist parents in their role as mechanchem, as educators, as parents, of raising and training their children.
Wow. So Rabbi is basically saying that every single one of us as parents, we're educators, we're mechanchim.
Yes.
Whether we have the title of
whether we have the title or not, and here's the scary part, whether we mean to do it or not, we're doing it. Because our children see everything that we do. It's true for educators as well. There's no such thing as being on in the classroom and I'm off when I'm not in the classroom. Every time a Rebbe walks down the street, every time a parent has an interaction in a store, the child is watching that parent to learn what is the appropriate interaction. Now, unfortunately, they can learn the wrong interaction, but that's our job to make sure that we are constantly and consistently sharing the right message.
Actions speak louder than words.
Always. Always. There's a quote that I heard many years ago. I have no idea who said it. It said, children may not always do what we say, but they will always do what we do.
Wow. So, that's a big lesson. Very big lesson. Don't do what I do, do what I say.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And the most difficult challenge that you come across as a parent, as an educator, is when the child senses an inconsistency. If you're talking about midos, proper behavior, and derech eretz, decorum, and behaving the right way, and then the child sees that the Rebbe or the teacher doesn't behave properly, right? They see what happens when they get cut off in traffic, and sometimes, not such a friendly response. A child sees that, and it's inconsistent with the message, then you lose so much ground that way, and you have to start repairing that and going back to that foundational relationship. The child needs to be able to trust the parent. The child needs to be able to trust the educator and the Rebbe in the room, and that's where consistency comes in.
Amazing. The many years that the Rabbi's been involved with educating children, the connection, the role between parents and Rebbeim, is it just a parent-teacher conference that they should be coming in, saying hi, and that's it? Is so more to it?
I realize that everything that I'm talking about leads to this question, which ultimately leads to this answer, which is it certainly shouldn't be. Right? It sometimes is, and sometimes I'm afraid to say it can be worse than that, but I will say as follows: the same way that a Rebbe's behavior has to be consistent throughout, and a parent's behavior, the partnership and relationship between parents and educators has to be consistent as well. Because here again, a parent, God forbid, sends a child to school with the sense that I have no faith in your teacher, I don't trust the school, they don't really know what they're doing, oh yeah, I disagree with how they did this, I disagree with how they did that. And the analogy that I often employ is parents, right? A mother and father can disagree terribly on a particular approach on a matter, right? I know that on occasion my wife and I will disagree.
Really?
It sounds shocking, but I think it's happened now once.
You could get me your finger.
I think there are times we agreed. Maybe that's what I said. We will disagree, but we know that when we present to the children, we're going to, whether it's a compromise, whether you will do it your way, we'll do it my way, whatever the answer is going to be, we're all on the same page.
In front of the children, we're on the same page. Behind closed doors, you can have your discussions, your difference of opinions.
Exactly. Because if not, then everybody's influence erodes. Right? If the child knows that the parents don't agree, it weakens both of their positions. Right? And it leaves room for whatever the child wants to start, and unfortunately can leave room for manipulation. Even very wonderful children. You may be familiar with the clinical terminology, playing mommy daddy, right? Oh yeah, this. So they're some of us refer to it as triangulation. That's the fancy way. But it's like, oh, mommy said, no, let's go ask daddy. Right? That kind of a thing. The same thing is true if the Rebbe's shares a message that's inconsistent with the message that's happening at home, or the parents are sharing a message inconsistent with what's being taught in the yeshiva, which is, I'll just insert this here, why it's so important to make sure that the yeshiva and the family are a good fit. And Baruch Hashem, Queens is a community where we have a lot of great yeshivas and schools from a variety of hashkafas backgrounds, sort of ideologies and approaches to education, and making sure that the family and the yeshiva are in sync at the top levels, at the broader levels, the philosophical levels, makes all of these things a lot easier, but it absolutely has to be the case. And maybe I'll share a little unsolicited advice.
Sure, we love it.
I continue to push the analogy of spouses, that spouses can also have disagreements and fight, but at the end of the day, there has to be a recognition, understanding that we're in this together, and we really want the same things, and whatever the challenges are, whatever the friction is, we're going to work it out. And when parents and schools work that way together, the result is always better for the child. Always better for the child. And it's okay. You can disagree with something that the yeshiva does, and believe it or not, I get a phone call like that every so often. A parent who disagreed with a particular approach to the yeshiva. I mean, not as often as my wife and I might have disagreed, but it'll happen from time to time. And I don't bring ego to the job. I don't bring ego to the yeshiva, and I'm ready to hear. I may feel that I'm right. I may understand that the parent is right. But at the end of the day, we want to work together and make sure that we find a path through for the betterment of the child.
I always say that when people, give some advice or constructive criticism to other people, people sometimes get offended. They get upset. And I always explain that, just like people are bringing it aware that you might be doing a certain mitzvah wrong. Just like you'll be appreciative that if a person has a stain, he's about to walk to a hall, to a wedding, and it's huge, it would have been embarrassing. You would be appreciative of the fact that someone brought it to your attention. How much more so spiritually? If there's a stain in a person's neshama, he's doing something. Yeah. Shouldn't be offended. You should be appreciative. You should be thankful.
Somebody once told me nobody ever feels that criticism is constructive.
No one
on the receiving end ever feels it's constructive, but it can be. And the closer you are to an individual, the more you want to offer them that advice, call it criticism, redirection, whatever it might be. If it's a stranger, you care less about the fact that they're walking into a wedding with a stain on their shirt. If it's your closest friend, you can't let them do that. And if we appreciate that level of feedback, call it criticism, feedback, whatever you want to call it, comes from a position of caring. 100%. And if we as a yeshiva didn't care about the outcome of our endeavor and weren't that interested in what ultimately your child finds success with in life, we wouldn't hock you a chinuch so much. We wouldn't give you so much grief. And I imagine the same thing is true from parents. And I've been in the parent position. I've been on that side of the desk. And I know that the only reason I would bring this up is because I know that we both want the same thing, and I'm offering you some feedback.
Yes, 100%. I think it's important. Not too long ago, a few months ago, there was a day off for the kids, whatever, a random Sunday it was, and my wife and I were like, what's going on over here? And they said in the calendar, Teacher Development Day, something along those lines. And
it was an hour, just for the record. We dismissed an hour early.
but I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important once my wife and I figure out what it's all about, that the teachers and the Rebbeim, there's if you could shed some light to parents out there.
Absolutely.
That they actually have classes or what's going on over there? Let us in over here.
If you want to be very good at what you do, you got to continue to grow in your own field. People who've been parents for many years go to parenting workshops, or they go to Chazaq lectures or programs. Right. The same thing is true for Rebbeim and teachers. First of all, it's not like we always know everything and remember everything, but there is new research. Education as a science has evolved considerably in the last.
Technology, for example,
technology in education, how to approach it, what can we use it for, what do we have to warn, as it were, our children about the pitfalls of. Everyone's got to keep their skills sharp.
100%. It's very important. And people don't understand that sometimes. I don't understand an hour.
Yeah.
But it's very important for the Rebbeim to be equipped, or the teachers.
Absolutely. And I'll share one example from a professional development session we had probably earlier at the beginning of this school year on Kriya. For Rebbeim, 1st grade through 8th grade. Now you walk through the door and say, I'm an 8th grade Gemara Rebbe. What do I have to know about Kriya?
Right.
So the answer is what to know about Kriya even in 8th grade. There are things that will come up that maybe were missed in 3rd or 4th grade, or maybe developed in 5th or 6th grade. And a Rebbe more attuned to how the science of reading and what children are going through when they start to piece things together in the earlier years, and then reinforce things that can fall by the wayside. There are rules that we learn when we're 6 or 7 that they're in our brains, but we have no idea what they're called. And we can't refer back to them because we just remember this is how I learned to read. But when you start breaking it down as a science, and Rebbe understands what's really going on, so that's for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade Rebbe, and high school Rebbeim as well. I speak to high school Rebbeim as well. I hear the same thing. So it's important to Keep working at your craft.
Definitely. Always learning and becoming better and growing. So right now, this Torah talk is going to be aired during the summer months. And obviously, there's no yeshiva in the summer months. But as a menam of a very prestigious yeshiva, and for many, many years in Vancouver as well, what tips could you give parents with regards to summer? I know that for my kids, they have their summer homework, and they have like the stickers they have to put on the kriya.
So one of the really nice things about summer is that there is less pressure of schedules, typically, for many people, certainly within a yeshiva. And it's an opportunity to be proactive and thoughtful about what you want to accomplish and setting goals for the coming year. We certainly do this systematically within yeshivas. This is when a Rebbe is going through curriculum, seeing what worked last year, what shifts we have to make, which vocabulary words should stay on the list and which ones maybe need to be replaced and so on. And you do it without that pressure of, oh, I have to be in the classroom tomorrow, this has to be done. Okay, I'm just going to use what I used last year. For parents as well, maybe the children are away at camp, right? So you have a few days to think without all the noise in the background. Think proactively. What are my goals for the year? Right now, one could argue that some schools might also not do this kind of planning, but many parents don't plan, right? I know where I want my child to be, right? So I heard in the name of a gadol, right? And it was in Yiddish, but I'll just say it in English. It's like, if there's something you want your child to be able to do when he's older, you have to teach him when he's younger. And you just think about what it is that I want my child to be able to do when he's older, and now's the time to map that out. One very obvious example, you have a boy who's, say he's 11 years old, so he's got 2 years to his bar mitzvah. Is he going to get up and read from the Torah? And it's not for every boy, and I cannot stress this enough. If it's not for your son, there's no mitzvah to make him do it.
Don't pressure him. Yeah. My parents, Shubrim, God bless them, they saw that I'm a bar mitzvah boy. I was really, I only did 3 lists.
Yeah.
Everyone was doing the whole parsha, and you're still bar mitzvah, as we like to say, even if you only read Maftir, not Torah, whatever it might be. But now's the time to think about it. Let's not wake up 3 months before. To feel pressured and rush into it.
And those kinds of things. And it also gives us that time to be mechanech, to educate, to share our values, our ideals with our children, so that they pick it up also without the pressure of, oh, I have to read, I have to lane tomorrow, I have to get up there and read 3 Eli's. No, talk about the idea, see how the child feels about it, whatever it might be, understand and spend that time with the child to appreciate what their unique strengths are. The summer is a great time to plan, because we have that breath, we have that space.
100% a person fails to plan is planning to fail.
Yes. We're good in quoting.
I love it.
Right?
It's great. But I'll tell you one thing. With regards to my son, Avad Yosef, who's going into 3rd grade, he called his cousin who was in 3rd grade last year. He's like, what did you learn last year? He started telling we learned this thing, Yosef, and that part of the Chumash, and this and that. And I'm like, Ovadia said, that's so smart. And this summer we have a Rebbe for him, and he's learning. He's preparing for next year. And my younger son, Moshe Meir, he's going to pre-1, I think it is. And my wife got him a kriya for the olive base, and then the sounds, babe.
What are we going to do with him for the first 2 months? He's going to know everything. That's the whole corner.
When a child feels success breeds success.
Absolutely.
I would tell it.
And I would add, every child can be successful.
100%.
Right?
With the proper intervention.
And it's important to understand what success is for that child. And like we talked about the bar mitzvah goals. If success for that child is to lane 2 aliyahs, then when he lanes 2 aliyahs, he's successful.
That's right.
Breaking his teeth and suffering through 7 aliyahs is not success for him, because that's not what he needed. Right? So it's important to appreciate and understand each child as parents and as educators. I was at a conference just a few days ago talking about, of course, the challenges of education, of chinuch, of Jewish education in our times.
Today's day and age.
Yeah, and somebody made a comment about, there's 25 boys in the classroom. It is very, very reasonable for a Rebbe to know every one of those 25 boys, for a teacher to know every one of those boys. It might not be on the first day or the second day. I joked when I came to Yeshiva Tiferes Moshe Kanai, there are 500 Talmidim. I still don't know all of their names, but I'm learning, like the ones who have their names on their yarmulke. It's a lot easier, right? So initials don't help, but if the name is there, it's fantastic. But over the course of the first few days of school, a Rebbe is going to learn everyone's name. And over the course of the first few weeks of the school, a Rebbe is going to learn what the strengths and challenges of each child are going to be. Same with the general studies teachers as well. That's education. That's connecting with the child. And when you know, 25 is a lot. I get it. You know, it's a lot, but it's totally doable and it's absolutely necessary.
100%.
And go ahead and do it.
They do it and do an amazing job with it. So, Rabbi, you gave us so much gems and so much great advice for Mechanechim Rebbeim, for the parents, of course. We have a minhag, a custom in Torah Talks, which is a final message, a takeaway that you can give to our broad audience, Rabbi.
Do I have 30 minutes now?
You have...
So we talked a lot. I'm just going to kind of recap, and I think would bring it to this final message. We talked a lot about what chinuch really means, how to connect with children, and the fact that it's very much a shared role and responsibility between parents and the professional educators, but that professional educators play the role as parent and parents play the role as professional educators. And that the strength of that partnership is ultimately, in my experience, is what determines overall success. The better that partnership, even if the parent is not perfect and the Rebbe is not perfect, if there's a strong partnership, the result is better than if you had a perfect Rebbe and a weaker relationship. But in terms of a final message, I'll share a beautiful idea. It's an Al-Shech. He's a
Al-Shech HaKadosh.
The Al-Shech HaKadosh is beautiful. We say it in Shema twice a day. We say, V'hoyu hadavarim ha'ela al levavecha. These words, these ideals of the Torah should be al levavecha, on your heart. And the very next words are v'shinantam levanecha. You should teach them diligently to your children. So the Al-Shech says the proximity of these two statements is
juxtaposition.
It's juxtaposition. I was going to say juxtaposition. I didn't want to sound so fancy, but okay.
I love that word.
These two words are placed here for a very obvious reason. It says, in order to successfully to successfully impart your ideals to your children, it has to be al levavecha. And that comes back to the consistency that we spoke about. If you live your values, your children will live your values. If you show them the beauty of what you have chosen, your path in life, your Yiddishkeit, and how important it is to you, it has to be important to them. And that doesn't mean that children don't rebel. Psychologically, it's actually, according to Adlerian psychology, says that adolescents rebel against their parents. That's part of growing up, is they start to rebel. But ultimately, that's what they come back to. If the message is strong, if they have a good relationship with the parent and appreciate what is of value to the parent, they're going to come back and appreciate it themselves as well. Let these words be on your heart, and then you give them over. What a
powerful message, Rabbi Dons.
Thank you so much.
The very things that come out of there enter the heart. Definitely a job well done for all that you do and done and continue doing for college. So we really appreciate it on behalf of Chazaq and the entire community. Hashem should bless you and the entire mishpacha. And we want to thank you for all the amazing advice, chinuch, education in today's day of age.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing for our community, the partnerships with the yeshivas, with the parents, with the children, with the families.
We want to thank all of our audience for joining us once again, Tuesday night to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talks with special guests. Dedications and future suggestions are always welcome. You the email info@chazaq.org. Shout out and thank you to all the platforms that host our amazing Torah Talks podcast. And a special shout out to Torah Anytime for their partnership at daily giving. $1 a day goes a very far way. We encourage everyone to check that out. And the entire Chazaq team and staff. And while we are in the summer, Chazaq's main mission and goal is to help inspire, guide, and change the lives of the thousands of Jewish kids, unfortunately, in the public school system that don't have a Jewish education. And this is the season. While the summer people are away, we're here, we're working full force to get kids from public schools and help them and guide them, hold hands to find them a Jewish day school, a yeshiva of their choice, hopefully, if it works out. But Baruch Hashem, over 1,500 kids already in the last few years alone from public schools to yeshiva. If you have a family member, a friend, a neighbor, anybody you know, this is the time for the September school year. They get to yeshiva, reach out to Chazaq. We'll do whatever we can to help them out. You should go up once again, Rabbi Pacht, for the amazing Torah talk. Yag the Torah, and we'll see you all.